The assignment I was given was to discuss the question, do role-playing games stand the test of time better than any other genre, using a methodology covered in our creativity, innovation and problem-solving module, and create a video documentary in order to show the results. The methodology I've chosen for this assignment is called the Plus Minus Interesting, or PMI, developed by Edward de Bono. This involves taking a statement, question, solution, etc. and spending 3 minutes writing down everything positive you can think of, then 3 minutes writing down everything negative, and finally 3 minutes writing down anything that comes to mind that is interesting but doesn't fit easily into positive or negative. During each stage you can only write down points that are relevant to the category you are doing. For example, you are not allowed to write down minuses during the plus stage. This forces you to focus on the task at hand explicitly and prevents you from putting more of a focus on any one category over another. The aim of doing a PMI is to achieve broad-mindedness in our thinking, rather than remaining the obedient servant of our own prejudices. To put it another way, the PMI is an attention expander. In this video I will discuss the top points from each category, starting with the positives. The first point is immersion. Immersion can be defined as the state of consciousness where a visitor or immersant's awareness of physical self is transformed by being surrounded in an engrossing environment, often artificial, creating a perception of presence in a non-physical world. This phenomenon of immersion is most prevalent in role-playing games. This is due to the fact that the user is playing a role themselves. Early digital role-playing games were based off the very popular tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, even down to having a digital dice roll to calculate damage done in battle. This was all done in hopes of holding on to the immersive nature of these games. This leads nicely into the second point of escapism. Escapism in this case refers to the fact that video games in general offer an escape from reality where the player can become anything they like: a professional football player, a race car driver, or a mighty warrior. Whatever it is they wish to be, there is a video game where they can live out their childhood dreams. Few offer more in the way of escapism than role-playing games. In these games, the player not only performs the action but can also choose the path their character follows, be it as a warrior, mage, thief, Jedi, Sith, bounty hunter, good or evil. The player can decide it all. The third point is unique experience. This refers to how the experience for each player is different, and as often is the case, each time they play through the game the experience is different. This can be down to any number of things, from what type of character they use, to what party members they have, or what in-game decisions they make. In older role-playing games, it was common to provide very little information to the player, forcing them to find out things on their own, either by accident or by talking to non-player characters. For example, in The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, the Master Enchanter Trainer was hostile by default, meaning in order to avail of his services, you needed to use a spell to charm him. The player is not told this and must figure it out on their own. It is content like this that means that player will most likely not experience everything in one playthrough, meaning that there is always more to discover. This leads into the fourth point of scale and scope. Role-playing games are often the largest games. They have large worlds inhabited by numerous characters, items, quests and stories, so that even if each individual area is quite small, there is an epic feeling to the world as a whole. In an attempt to create unique experiences and promote replayability, there are often quests which have prerequisites, such as player level, player allegiance, a specific item. This is all to ensure that the player gets the most out of the game experience. This is also often achieved by having an abundance of side quests that are optional for the player scattered throughout the game world. And in the case of the Elder Scrolls series, for example, it is achieved by creating a huge world that the players will rarely fully explore in one playthrough. The fifth point is customization. This refers to a number of things within the realms of role-playing games. First off, there is the customization of the player character at the beginning, appearance, class, statistics, etc. Then there is the abilities learned throughout the game, spells or special moves for example. And finally there is the customization of the character's choices. Do they perform good or evil acts? What dialogue options do they use and why? And what effect do their choices have on the world around them? In the most popular role-playing games, Baldur's Gate for example, the answer to these questions really have an effect on the type of game that the player experiences. The final point is that role-playing games by nature are focused around story. This isn't just about the main storyline the character follows, but also the story of the world, the stories of the side quests and the story told by the NPCs. Every one of these aspects comes together in order to create the story of the world, and the more engaging the world, the more involved the player will become. The fact that the emphasis is on story and not gameplay or graphics, they tend to age better because if the focus is on graphics, once those graphics become obsolete, so too does the game. Starting now with the negatives, the first being similar to the last point made, is the story is of the utmost importance. This means that if it isn't done well, then the game will fail completely. In a role-playing game, unlike other genres, even if the graphics are breathtaking and the gameplay is groundbreaking, if the story is not up to scratch, then the chances are that the target market will see through everything else and won't enjoy the game. This is because the target market are looking for the next great story to lose themselves in, and so will be very critical of this aspect. After being spoiled for choice with regards to customization, the expectations for personalizing a character are quite high. If the choices for creating a unique experience for each character are very limited, the game will suffer. The purpose of this genre is to allow the user to play a role. The more options there are that allow the player to personalize the character, the better the game is achieving its goal. Better the game is achieving it. The issues that some modern gamers have with older role-playing games is that the graphics and feel of the game are so vastly different to what they would be used to in modern games that they find them difficult to play. This difficulty can lead them to not liking the experience of playing the game, or lead to the assumption that it is old and therefore not as good as the modern alternatives. In certain cases, they struggle with the slower paced style of the classic role-playing games instead of the quick-paced modern alternatives. Another issue players can have with older role-playing games is that they require a lot of investment, of time, of energy and of imagination. With regards to time, they are not the type of game that you could play for a few minutes here and there. They require the player to put in numerous hours developing their character and progressing through the game. The energy required refers to the fact that the games were ruthless and needed the player's attention. If the player wasn't paying attention, their whole party could be killed by a disgruntled wolf. Finally, the investment of imagination refers to the fact that events would happen in the game that weren't visually represented, but instead would be represented by text, like in Baldur's Gate or Fallout, or just would not be represented at all and the player would fill the blanks in their head, again reminiscent of tabletop role-playing games. If the player wants something mindless to use as escapism, these games are not it. Unlike in modern games where there is instant gratification or reward for an action, classic role-playing games often relied on the long game, meaning that at the beginning the player is helpless and needs help for the easiest of tasks and battles, but by the end of the game becomes a force to be reckoned with. This progression from dimwit to demigod is what appeals to certain types of gamers, but has the opposite effect on others. Some gamers wish to have immediate access to action and be able to do everything pretty much straight away. This means that for certain gamers this equates to a lot of time wasted. They do not wish to spend time building their character. They want a character that is already a match for any enemy they will encounter, and they want those encounters now. As mentioned before, these games were unforgiving. They did not hold the player's hand and tell them how to do everything. Quests did not have markers telling the player where to go. Certain classes were more difficult to play as. In Baldur's Gate, a mage can have a poor health roll which could set their health as 1, meaning absolutely anything can kill you at the beginning of the game, it just has to hit you. Battles often required trying multiple strategies in order to win. You couldn't just go in all guns blazing and come out on top. Essentially, they were much more difficult. This difficulty doesn't appeal to all gamers. Dying repeatedly and having to try again and again, not being able to find the quest's target, this just causes frustration and equates to no enjoyment of the game experience. As touched on above, it often comes down to what the player themselves is looking for. One of the main reasons that these games stand the test of time so well is that they are appealing to a market of very loyal fans. They appeal to nerds like myself, people who do invest a lot of time in games, who spend money on games, and who have a strong online presence and community. They are the kind of person who seeks escapism. There is a sense of brand loyalty to these designers. By the merit of the designers' names alone, Obsidian's Kickstarter Project Eternity has gained a substantial amount more than their $1.1 million goal to get the idea off the ground. There is also a sense of elitism to liking these games or disliking them, whoever an individual falls in that divide. As with any creative medium, people will attempt to show their knowledge and interest in the genre by either praising or condemning popular examples. There are a number of examples of games that have gained a following more so in recent years than when they were created. These games are often spiritual predecessors of popular games, or quite often another title created by a popular designer. One such example is Planescape Torment, a game based in the Dungeons & Dragons universe and designed by Chris Avellone, who also created the Icewind Dale series and a number of games from the Fallout and Neverwinter Nights series. This title, a lesser known game from Chris's catalogue, has found a market more in recent years, with such sites as goodoldgames.com selling digital copies. To conclude, there are arguments for both agreeing and disagreeing to the statement, but as hinted above, this genre lends itself well to nostalgia, and through its loyal fan base will survive regardless of whether the games themselves stand the test of time better than any others.